talk to you about setting goals and staying on track and staying organized with your goals. The reason this subject is so important is that because a lot of people spend the time on in their life doing things and thinking about things, but not really writing things down and being deliberate on what they want. So I would like to talk about different ways that you can set goals, stay organized on following through, and also things that you can do on a daily and a weekly basis to keep yourself on track. All of us are really, really busy, and a lot of my clients I find struggle with kind of finding the time to sit down and being organized with the information and what is it that they want to accomplish, as well as ensuring that they're staying organized throughout their week, their month, and their year. So you can set goals at any point in your life. I find important milestones are very helpful to check in with yourself and see where you're at. I had my birthday recently, so that's always a good time for me to check in. It's your personal year ending and starting fresh, so it's a good time to check in with yourself. It doesn't always have to be around Christmas and New Year. There's many ways that you can stay organized and on track and find those milestones. And actually, you can start at any point in your life. So I suggest that if you are thinking about some new goals or starting fresh, you can start today. So one of the things that I always do is that I find that it's good to have things written down. It's good to spend the time to sit down and think of the bigger goals. That would be sort of the 5-year mark, the 3 to 5 years of your life, and things that you want to accomplish. So some really big things that you're looking at accomplishing. So for example, it would be if somebody's thinking to write a book. That's a big goal to accomplish. And you haven't started, you've never done it, but you want to do it in the next 3 to 5 years of your life. The other thing could be finishing a degree. Or moving to another country, if that's something like a long-term goal. So any large long-term goal would be something to look at. So I usually find that 3 to 5 of the bigger goals in your life are enough to be able to write down what you need to do about them and to stay organized. What I use is I use this Moleskine book. And it allows me to write down my big goals when I sit down and start planning my year or my personal year, or I start planning ahead long term. So what I do is I write down sort of 3 or 5 big goals that I'm looking to accomplish in the next year or 3 years or 5 years. And that way it allows me to stay on track. So what I would do is I would take a goal and I would write it down at the top of the paper here. And it would say, for example, writing a book. And it is one of my goals, so I have it written down. Then I would break down that goal into some smaller steps on what needs to happen. So I need to have an outline, I need to have kind of ideas around the book. So all the things that would be necessary to accomplish that big milestone or that big goal. Next thing I would do is I would do, sort of write the next goal and also break it down into some smaller steps, but not the very detailed steps. So this would be kind of this would be the planning stage of taking the larger goal and breaking it down into some kind of things that need to happen before that big goal is accomplished. The next thing that I do is I look at what are some of the behaviors that need to happen around the goal. Oftentimes we focus on the goal. For example, if somebody wants to lose weight and they're looking at, let's say, losing 15 pounds, they're focused on losing 15 pounds. And they're always thinking of losing 15 pounds. So if they're starting to change their diet, or if you're starting to look at, what are some of the other things like exercise that you need to do. If you are not, like the 15 pounds kind of is not coming off, people get discouraged and the motivation sometimes disappears. So we need to think of the behaviors that would get us to the goal. And if you're following through with the behavior on a daily and a weekly and a monthly basis, you'll be able to accomplish your goal. It will allow you to stay focused and on track. So for example, if it has to do with writing a book, uh, what are the goals around writing a book, some smaller goals. So for example, you need to write an outline. So what are the behaviors that you need to have around writing a book? So you need to sit down and write a number of times a week. So you write down, the behavior would be, writing for half an hour daily, or writing a chapter weekly for the book. So or doing research on your book on a weekly basis. So those are some of the smaller steps, but also the behaviors that need to happen. It could be networking with other writers. It could be joining forums online with writers. So the things that need to happen, that would be smaller goals, but also that could be kept, that you can keep track of on a daily basis. This way, when you have the larger goals, you can transfer them into the smaller deliverables, or into the smaller goals, and into the behaviors. One of the other things that I find very, very helpful to stay organized is the daily agenda and the weekly agenda. What happens for me personally, and I know for a lot of people that who I work with, and who want to be accountable to themselves and also understand where they're at, it's about having a weekly and a daily agenda where you're able to write down some smaller things that you need to work on a weekly and a daily basis. So, for example, I use this Moleskine journal, which allows me to, and it's usually by the end of the year, it's usually pretty full and thick, and it has a lot of different, pieces of paper in it, and my pages are pretty full with things I need to do and accomplish. So I write down on a weekly basis some of the things that need to happen, that I know I have to accomplish throughout the week. I also sit down and recommend doing this in the evening, where you do a quick outline of what needs to happen the next day. What that does is it allows to unload your mind before you go to bed. It also allows you to be a little bit more organized and prepared for the next day. And you can do the same once a week to prepare for your week, at least the bigger things that are coming. This could be appointments, this could be things that you need to do that have to do with your daily life and some of the responsibilities, as well as things that have to do with the behavior. So I find that when I need to work on a document, or when I need to to do my weekly video, and I need to send out a weekly email, those are the things that would go into my weekly planner, and I know I have to get it done by by a certain date. Let's say I have to do everything by Tuesday, so I would have it in there saying complete email or complete an article. So this way it allows you to stay organized with smaller deliverables that are part of the bigger goal. The other thing about the bigger goals is that you can come back to tracking where you're at on a monthly basis. So what I recommend is having this book by your bed, and checking at least monthly. You can pick a date by when you want to do it. It could be the beginning of the month, the middle of the month, or the end of the month. It's usually a little bit easier to keep track. And pick a date by when you open this book with the bigger goals, and you check in to see what accomplishments you have made towards the bigger goal. So which means that when you are writing your goals down, you can leave a few pages in between so that you can write your updates on how much progress you have made towards the goal. What this allows you to do is keep in mind your higher dreams, your bigger goals that you're working towards every day. And first of all, it will keep you inspired and motivated, and it will keep you organized, and it will allow you to stay on track and be focused on what is it that you set out to accomplish. The other thing that I find very helpful is a way to write down your ideas on a day-to-day basis, and to be able to keep track of some of the things that just come up for you. And they could be connected to your bigger goals, they could be connected to something else, or to some creative project that you might be working on. I find, and I've spoken about this in my previous videos, is that when inspiration visits, we cannot sometimes predict when, and we also cannot predict how quickly we might forget what came to us. And I find that many times when you're in the middle of something and you might be busy, but an idea comes and you think that you're going to remember later, I find that usually that does not happen. As though, even though I have pretty good memory personally, and I know with a lot of people who I've spoken to, they say that inspiration, when it visits, it's good to kind of meet it at that point and also capture at least a short idea or something that will allow you to come back to that thought later, so you can maybe come back to that creative point, or it will spark up something else for you. So I have also sort of a journal that I keep on a daily basis, where I write down some thoughts, some ideas, some morning practice ideas and thoughts, or meditation moments and things that come to me. I find what it does, it allows me to stay really focused on and focused inwardly, because there's so much noise out there, and we all know that it's really, really hard to stay focused sometimes, and to really check in with yourself and to really quiet what's around us, to be able to tune into that inner voice, or some of the creativity, some of the things that are asking to come out. So having a small journal, this one is not that small, but it's very helpful, and I find that I usually sort of carry it around or have it in the car, because it is helpful to write things down. If this is too much, you can always take a smaller book. I have a few of them. I have one in the car, where I just sometimes jot down things that randomly come to me, which is also helpful. Or something like this, which you could use for bigger goals, but having another one of this size that you can carry in your purse, or in your pocket, or have somewhere close by. So having all of these things is helpful to stay on track of some of the things that go through your mind, some of the thoughts, some of the ideas, and to be able to really tune into kind of what is it that you want and desire, and also what are some of the bigger things that you want to accomplish. I find that it's good to do it at any time. Now, what happens sometimes is that your goals can change, and that's fine. That's why it's good to have them written down, and to have the smaller goals written down next to it, and the things that you're working on throughout the year. So what you can do is, with this book, where you write down your bigger goals, and when you check in on a monthly basis, once you pick that one day a month that you check in with yourself, because it's very important to stay on track on a monthly basis. Or if you miss that date, you can always do it on a different date, but make sure that you keep coming back to it and staying on track that way, to remind yourself of what are the things that you're working towards. You can write down that other goal that all of a sudden maybe is more important, because priorities change and things come up. So it's okay to change them, as long as, again, you write things down and you stay on track of working towards your goals. One of the way that I find is helpful is the technique of setting SMART goals. I'm sure most of you have heard what a SMART goal is, but I have a slightly different system that I've learned through IPAC, which is the institute where I got my coaching certification. It's a way to set, they're called AIM SMART. So the AIM SMART goals are the goals that are acceptable, ideal, and middle. So you break your goals into the 3 levels. Sometimes, for example, when it has to do with losing weight, and I know that when people set out to lose weight, they put in sort of a number, let's say, of 30 pounds to lose weight. So that could be an ideal goal. Now, there's also an acceptable goal, which means something that's sort of like you won't go below it. That's kind of, you draw the line. And the middle goal. So, with the weight, for example, if 30 pounds would be your ideal goal, it could be 15 pounds would be acceptable, and 20 pounds would be reasonable. Would be a middle goal. So it's important to break down the goals sometimes into the categories for yourself, because if you are not able to kind of stay at the ideal level, that way you won't give up. You'll stay on track, and you'll keep moving forward, and will not lose the motivation towards achieving your goal. And so that's the aim part of what I'm talking about. Now, the SMART part And that's the part that has been around for quite some time, and it totally makes sense that your goals have to be SMART for specific, S for specific, M is for measurable, A is for achievable, R is for reasonable, and T is for time oriented. So SMART goals allow you to be deliberate, organized, and they allow you to set goals that are actually something that you can work towards. So if you have goals that are maybe really big and they feel like it's maybe unachievable, you can always break it down to something that is more chewable, more easy to see and grasp on a more reasonable, on a more manageable scale. So for example, if you are writing a book, or if you're working towards running a marathon, what are some of the goals that you can set out for yourself to prepare? So if we're talking about writing a book, the acceptable goal would be what? You could be working, you could, let's say, have the outline ready and have the draft of the book ready, let's say, in a year and a half. The ideal goal, you could have that ready in a year. And the middle goal could be, you could be ready in 9 months, for example. And the specific would be, what are you going to do around achieving that goal? So what are some of the specific actions and the behaviors that will happen towards your goal? The measurable part would be, how can you measure? So for example, would you write a chapter every week? Would you sit down every day to write for 20-30 minutes? So that's the measurable part. The achievable part would be around, what are kind of the parts that you can do to stay on track and to work towards your goal on a regular basis. And reasonable is something that you can measure, you can understand what's expected from you, and something that you can contribute to on a regular basis. And the time oriented is obviously, the amount of time by when you're planning to achieve the goal and have a deadline, so that that this is kind of your your finish line, and that's what needs to happen. So everything in between is what you need to do to accomplish that goal. So I'm hoping that the AIM SMART is something that you can use if you're looking to break down the goals into measurable specific steps that you're able to see and stay on track of, as well as break down your goals into potential levels of the acceptable, ideal, and the middle goal. That again allows you to be able to scale down sometimes if you feel that maybe there's too much going on and you're going for the acceptable part of the goal versus the ideal. So that will keep you motivated, inspired, and on track. So I'm hoping that these techniques have been helpful, and you can use the kind of the idea of, first and foremost, writing things down. Second of all, picking 3 to 5 goals for the next 3 to 5 years that you want to accomplish. You can always do this for a 1-year goal. What I find though is that when you try to cram all of that into a year, sometimes it throws you off and it puts too much pressure where you kind of give up in the first 2-3 months. So that's why it's good to have a bit of a runway and give yourself a little more room to breathe and set out big goals where you have the time, you have the capacity to include that in your life, but also work on it on a regular basis. So once you write down the bigger goals, make sure that you break them down into the smaller goals and the behaviors, at least 3 habits or behaviors that you need to have around those goals, so that those behaviors and habits can be included into your weekly and daily life, and that way you can keep on track. And make sure that monthly you look into that smaller book that I talked about, and you stay on track of sort of the course of your journey of how far you are and what steps are you taking to accomplish those larger goals. And you can write them down under each one of the bigger goals, and ensure that when you are writing them down, you're actually kind of feeling like, yes, this is the step that I need to take towards achieving the bigger goal. And the Aim Smart, when you break down the goals into the ideal, acceptable, and the middle, it gives you more room to work with. It allows you to also see your goal is something that has life and has movement. Oftentimes when we set goals, we stay so focused on the goal and so focused on that specific result that if we're not getting that result within the kind of the expectation, within our expectation, we give up. And that's one of the bigger issues psychologically. That's why it's good to have goals and break them down into smaller goals, and the behavior and the habits around the goal that you can stay on track and on top of and organized. So that's it for today. Thank you to everybody who was watching. Just remember that you can always start today or on an important milestone in your life to get yourself on track and to really spend the time and kind of see what are some of the bigger things that you want to accomplish in life. I find that it's actually fascinating. I've started doing kind of writing goals about 10 years ago and writing down things and staying on track of what I wanted to accomplish. And it was fascinating to me how much of that I've actually accomplished. Before, I found that I've had certain goals and they would be something that I kept in my head and I had certain ideas, but there wasn't time spent by me to define what I wanted to work on and what is it that I needed to accomplish in order to achieve those goals. It allows you to stay more laser focused, but also it allows you to keep things in perspective. So sort of the big picture, small picture, and it allows you to connect yourself and your daily life to the bigger things in your life. And I find that when we are able to see kind of ourselves and our journey as part of something bigger, as part of us adding something to the world, being connected to something bigger than ourselves and our life, in the moments when we have a hard time getting up in the morning for one reason or another, or if we're going through something big, transforming or life-changing, and we're going through something hard, we can see that there is bigger things that we can do, and that everything that we do in our life on a daily basis is connected to our bigger journey and the reason why we're here. And that's where I think is really the gold of this exercise is giving yourself, first of all, the luxury to dream, to spend the time and going within and thinking about what you want, and also making it a reality or getting close to that reality. And maybe some of those 3 to 5 year goals are kind of really far ahead, or maybe you'll change your mind halfway through, but you'll know you're working towards something that is soul affirming, that is life affirming for you, that is motivating and inspiring you to do things on a daily basis that are just part of a bigger journey that you're here for, and that will expand you as well, and allow you to stay on track, but also allow you to kind of connect to the bigger dreams, which sometimes get lost in the shuffle on a daily basis. So I wish you all good luck. Stay healthy, radiant, and joyful. Thank you.